Councilman Casella.
Here.
Supervisor Thurston.
Here. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you. Okay. Before we have motion to adopt the agenda, I have several largely minor items to add. It'll, for the most part, with respect to the budget transfer lines that were not included. One is we have a couple of items for Mike Sheehan with respect to a new roller and also a mulching of the compost pile. And we'll discuss those when we get to that later on. We also have Steve Frazier, a $500 line for general supplies that he had sent email on. Also, Jessica Fulton has a sheet that got omitted with respect to several transfer lines. So I think that includes all those items. Then also, and Jim Horan can speak to it just very briefly, we had a request with respect to Pasadena Court.
Pasadena Court, yeah. So the bond expires. There's a 2-year maintenance bond, 3-year maintenance bond actually, which expires on December 14th. The town attorney, that's me. Town engineer and the highway superintendent had signed off and said that currently there are no defects with respect to the road, and it's appropriate that the bond be released. Typically, we don't do any resolutions or anything, but in this case, it's a cash bond. So I would just ask at this point in time that the board would authorize the controller to release the cash bond.
Okay. Do you know how much it is?
I believe it's 52,000. Hold on, I can find it.
Is there a fire code violation if you open that door?
No,
We should open it.
if we could turn the heat off.
Steve, can you open that door because of the heat?
Or at least crack it.
It is $34,777.60.
Okay. Jim, did you have anything else as far as the agenda goes?
No, I believe everything was submitted.
Okay. So with those additional items, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next item will be acknowledge minutes of 2 meetings. The first one will be, do I have a motion to acknowledge the minutes of November 5,
I'll move it.
2022?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, that motion passes. The next item is a motion to acknowledge the minutes of November 14, 2022.
Make that motion.
Motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next item is to have a motion to open the public hearing tonight. Before we do, Jim, why don't you just summarize for all the residents here what is involved in this public hearing tonight? What are the issues
Okay.
before?
So what is before the board this evening is a proposed local law to repeal Section 240-50 of the Town of Wappinger zoning code, which is entitled Designed Residential Development. The section of the code was first adopted under the town zoning ordinance back in 1980. And the language in the ordinance has more or less continued to be the same. However, since that time, the other provisions of the code, definitional provisions and such, have since changed. So there are some inconsistencies between 240-50 as drafted. In 2010, the town of Wappinger adopted a new comprehensive plan. This particular section was not discussed in the comprehensive plan, but some of the changes in the comprehensive plan, particularly with respect to the categories of roads, changed, making some of the provisions in this law inconsistent. There's other provisions in the town code which do very similar things to what this current section 240-50 does, which, encourages the preservation of open space and creating a variety of housing types, but there are other provisions in the code which are less cumbersome procedurally. So what is under New York law, in order to adopt a local law, what the process is for the town board to introduce the local law. It then is, under our code, referred to the planning board for comment. Under New York General Municipal Law, it also gets referred to Dutchess County Planning Department. And then they make reports back to the town board, which both bodies have done. And then there is a public hearing that is required under Municipal Home Rule Law to adopt a local law. That is what's scheduled for this evening, which gives the opportunity for the public to make comments to the town board regarding the proposed legislation. And at the end of that process, the town board would also close the public hearing. And as part of the legislative process for any law in New York State that's adopted by any town board, any legislative body, there is a requirement where SEQR, State Environmental Quality Review, must take place if it potentially could have an effect on the environment. So one of the other things that the town board has to do before it adopts the local law is adopt either a negative declaration or a positive declaration. With respect to this, there's a resolution on the agenda which proposes to adopt a negative declaration based on the nature of this law, which has very little effect on the environment. There's no construction that's proposed with respect to this local law. It's really more regulatory in nature, and so on the agenda this evening, in addition to the resolution to adopt the local law, there's a resolution to adopt a negative declaration. And should the town board vote to adopt the local law, it would be repealed from the town of Wappinger Code. There has been a report back from Dutchess County Planning, which states that it does not agree with the proposed action of the town board. In its comments, Dutchess County Planning suggests that the town board amend the local law rather than appeal it outright. And based on that recommendation, if the board, so their recommendation states, for the reasons stated above, we recommend the town board not adopt the proposed local law repealing 240-50, voting and reporting requirements. If the board acts contrary to our recommendation, the law requires that it do so by a majority plus one of the full membership of the board, and that it notify us of the reasons for its decision. And it's from, signed by Ian Rafter, Commissioner, by Tara Grogan, Planner. So, having said that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hand, for reviewing it. So the process that we'll go through tonight is once we open for public hearing, then we'll invite folks to come up and speak to the board, identify yourself and your residents. Then we'll have the applicants that are concerned specifically with the area just, come up and speak right after that. And then, there'll be a chance for some additional comments by our residents. So, sit down for a little bit, and then, we'll, address that later on. So do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. So now, if any of the residents want to make comment, please, come on up and identify yourself, your name, and your residence generally within the town. Thank you.
Can you give him time?
Do you want time limit? No, right now, let's.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ralph Hafner. I'm a resident of 334 Cedar Hill Road in the town of Wappinger. My property does abut the proposed development area. First and foremost, I want to know how this board has been or is attempting to circumvent environmental impact studies conducted by the Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, state agency, not a development opinion, not a town board opinion, and I don't even want to get into the terrible rumors that exist about some people receiving inspiration to put this project through as fast as possible. I don't want to even insinuate something.
Expand on
But
that?
anyway,
Because
so
that's-
with that said,
Yeah.
and I want that on record. I want my name, Ralph Hafner, to be on record of just commenting on that. This project is going to eliminate, if approved, is going to eliminate one of the last holdings of an open area of space in our town.
If I may, just for the
Well,
public,
I don't know if you may.
I'm just asking
Yes.
the board, I'm not asking you.
Yes, please, Jim.
I'm asking the board. This public hearing is not on this project. The
Right.
public hearing is on a repeal of the local law that authorizes the application itself. This is not a hearing.
To circumvent an environmental impact study.
No, it's not.
No.
It has nothing to do with that. What the public hearing today is to do is to repeal the section 240-50. It has nothing to do with an application. It has nothing to do with anything that's pending before this board other than the repeal of this section. That's all it has to do with. And part of this
And what would be
action-
the interest to repeal that section of, what would, whose interest would that be in favor of?
That clearly not of the applicant, because then their application goes away.
Please, don't insult
No,
our-
that's what it does. What the law on currently pending is to repeal 240-50. The applicants have proposed an application under section 240-50. If this local law is adopted, that application is moot and cannot proceed. Okay? Now, again, this only deals with 240-50. The application, the applicant has a legal right to make an application for a conventional subdivision, an average density subdivision, and any other subdivisions under the code, just like any other property owner does in the town of Wappinger.
Very good. With that said, I want to continue if I can, and I know we only have a few minutes.
Sure.
You've taken most of those from me. Thank you. I want this board to recognize that this is one of the last holdouts in our town of undeveloped area. And you don't live near there. You don't see the box tortoises that come through our property. You might not even care about them. You're probably not fond of insects and butterflies and everything that comes with this area. That will be eliminated. Don't smirk. I don't like smirks. that comes with this area.
We got to have a little more decorum and respect here.
Well, that,
because-
I
let me-
appreciate
let
that,
me just
William,
be-
yeah,
let me be-
but
let me-
I can't help but notice.
Sir,
what-
sir, again.
Yeah, please.
I'm not even familiar with this project, just so you're aware.
I bet you're not.
Well, I don't need those types of comments, because this, as the attorney said, is not even an application before this town board. This piece of legislation tonight is separate and distinct
Okay.
from what you probably have received in the mail or what you are receiving via social media. Understand that.
I'm not a social media person.
I'm
But
not
I do
going to
respect
sit here.
that you are
I'm not-
trying to put me
Excuse
back
me,
into.
Sir, I'm not going to sit here, okay, and have someone making these pointed assertions towards me as if I have some sort of, undue, or unethical approach with an application I'm not aware of, okay? I've been sitting here way too
Well,
long to have
you know,
residents stand
why
up
aren't you
and
aware of it?
and look at me in a way that I have something to do with this application, because I don't. This application hasn't even come to the town board yet.
Well, we've been here many times for this issue.
You have,
No,
you have
not
been
this
here.
application.
Well,
You have
well,
not.
no,
You've
not-
been on
not
separate one.
this
Each owner of
application.
property has a right
However-
individually to present
So I want
on
you,
that issue.
and I
That's
will
all.
end it right away. I want you to all appreciate not just my passion,
Right.
the majority of the people behind me, except for those on my left. Sorry, but
Appreciate it.
because once we eliminate this 200 plus acres, whatever it is, once we blacktop it, say goodbye to the salamanders, the bats, the coyotes, the deer, and that might not be important to you.
Why do you say that?
Yeah.
Why do I say it
that?
might
Yeah,
not be
absolutely.
important?
Yeah, why would you say that?
Because it might not be.
Okay, well, again,
Yeah.
let's have a little respect here, okay? I'm not even familiar with this project. I represent the northwest quadrant of
Well,
this town.
if you're going to
okay?
make a determination on this project,
I'm not making a determination on this project.
No,
I'm
we're
here to
just
make a determination on a
determination
piece of
on the piece of
legislation.
legislation.
Well-
That's all it is.
Okay, that's what this
Okay?
is. This is a section of the code
Yeah.
that, as you heard from the attorney, is being repealed. Not for any reasons that you are assuming, okay? Don't assume that there's some sort of gain here, because there's not.
well, there would be a gain for the tax revenue. Don't tell me there wouldn't be a gain.
That's
Don't,
not-
please, don't.
There is no
I
gain.
understand you
Okay.
for disagreeing with me,
Time's up.
but
Please,
but
go
Dick,
back.
don't.
We're not playing any games. We're here actually addressing a weakness in the current
Yeah.
code.
Well, the people
So,
behind me
we
are
don't
not playing
appreciate-
games
Well,
either.
that's because somebody's been spreading false rumors out there. That's right, about this project.
Clearly, that's true.
Yeah, because you're even up here thinking that we're going to be passing something on this legislation. We're not.
It's one
Right?
step to the next, to the next.
No.
Don't.
Listen.
So,
Please.
This is not the next
So-
step. This
so
makes multiple
is your-
steps likely.
do you have?
I'm sorry if I insulted anyone.
Well.
My name is Ralph Hafner, and we'll meet again.
Do you have a position one way or another on the legislation?
Of course I do.
And what
What's
is
that?
it?
That's my opinion.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's what the public hearing is for.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
That's Jim Horan. He's the attorney to the town, sir.
okay.
Let's show some respect, folks. Understand that we're not trying to build anything, and I've been through this before, okay? We have an obligation as a town, and I've been here for 16 years. Okay, I've been on both sides of this. I'm not going to sit here and be yelled at for a project that some people are spreading rumors that I support, okay? I don't support anything, especially tonight when we have no actionable items for this project, that I haven't even seen this project, which would require a rezone. We are trying to proactively move forward in cleaning up the code so that it can be more consistent with today's standards. That has nothing to do with this project.
Exactly. Please.
Hi, my name's Bernadette Bodie. I'm at 12 Winfield Terrace, Wappinger. I want to thank Councilman Beal and Councilman Casella for bringing to our attention that there was this disparity between the town's comprehensive plan and the code, the way it's written. And I would urge that, you repeal those sections of the code that takes away the checks and balances that we as a democracy have over the system. We want you to make every proposal go through due process and to be evaluated by an individual project's merits and not not to be able to scoot in through some loophole. So we appreciate that you're tying up the loopholes through this proposed piece of
Thank
action
you.
tonight.
I would add that the whole board is doing
Yes,
that.
well,
And I made
I
amendments
just
to the
saw
law
names.
to make sure that this was done properly.
Okay, I
that's
just
all.
saw names associated with the resolution, and those are the two people that I'm expressing my
Thank you.
gratitude to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person, please.
Hello, I'm Cliff Jakeman. I'm a resident. I live on All Angels Hill Road, and I would just like to express my approval towards the resolution adopting the local law to eliminate the authority for designed residential developments in the town of Wappinger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? Yes, please.
I have a question, actually. I don't know if you guys can answer questions. I'm Matt Nataro. I'm actually friends with Johnny, but we have a different thought process, I believe, on it, but that doesn't matter. This section that you're looking to address in third grade language, can you just say what it does and what it doesn't do? Is that possible? I know the gentleman over here explained it was kind of,
Sure.
I don't mean it to be, it was just kind of, if you can, write it in crayon, I'd
Right.
appreciate it.
Simply, it allowed any applicant, for any development, but particularly related in this area because of the coordination with the highway, code issues, to circumvent basically the board,
The planning board or the?
No, the town board on the rezoning. It's a technicality, okay, that exists and has existed for, a long time, as Jim said, 1980.
Okay.
So basically, it's tightening up the code that would allow the process to work so that either it comes before the town board and/or the planning board and follow that process rather than, looking at it from the point of view of a code exception which allowed a different process to occur. I think that was the intention of, the board members in doing this.
Okay. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
The process would be different than, how would the process?
She's got to come on.
be
She's
different?
got to come
Yeah, please come on up and identify yourself, Robin. No, I mean, for the residents, for the TV, we want everybody to identify themselves. Thank you.
I'm Robin LaCarrie. I live at 15 Red Hawk Hollow Road in Wappingers Falls. Yeah, I'm a little bit, I spent the whole day trying to study this, and I'm trying to understand it. So my understanding is, how would the process be different when this is removed? Does that give you back the ability to make the decision about whether to change the zoning from residential to multifamily? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
you understood it well.
Oh, thank you.
Right, Jim? I mean, simply stated, that's correct.
Yeah, I
Don't
mean,
need-
so what 240-50 does, it's what's called a special permit. So it's a special permit that is granted by the town board. And under the way the code is currently drafted, an applicant makes an application to the town board for a special permit. There are some rather lengthy criteria in the code as to, it's designed for larger parcels. There's a minimum, if you have water and sewer, it's 50, a property that would submit, that would be able to create as of right 50 building lots. Without water and sewer, it would be a property that would create 100 building lots. It's applicable throughout the town, but there must be access to what are called collector roads. And from a process point of view, the applicant would go to the town board with a special permit, and the application basically requires them to show what they would be permitted without, as of right, what they could do under the conventional subdivision. This section then provides that the applicant can, in essence, shrink the footprint, create multifamily buildings with up to 6 units, and then the code requires that, in essence, the balance of the property be reserved for open space. But so the applicant has an obligation to explain what their plan is to the town board. The town board would then refer that out to the planning board, the highway superintendent, Dutchess County Planning for comment back. And then the planning board, then the town board would make a determination as to whether or not it would, the application met the standards that was set forth in the code to grant a special permit. Should a special permit be granted, the project would then go back to the planning board for site plan approval before the planning board. So that's the process as currently drafted. And, you know, with respect to multifamily housing, you know, certain property owners have made application to the town board to do an outright rezone to permit multifamily housing within the town for their property. But, you know, this provision basically includes limited types of multifamily based on the requirements in this section.
So the key, you know, Robin, just further, you know, I think Jim mentioned it, but I'll just cut through everything else that Jim said. It focuses on a collector road. You know, the old legislation had that out, let's say, in it, you know, so, and that was basically under old maps and under the, you know, previous comprehensive plan, you know, before the 2010. So that's really just boils it down to that particular point.
So Jim, can you explain to the audience, because I was going to just say that.
Yeah,
Jim, can you
that's
explain
what-
what a collector road is? Because it's, you know, code was one thing back in the 80s, and then when we did the comprehensive plan in 2010, it's different than what we had back in the 80s.
So the 1975 comprehensive plan identified some collector roads in the town, basically as saying major roads that connected various parts of the town, whereas the current comprehensive plan describes collector roads as county roads. So there are some roads in the town that connect, you know, for example, Didell Road. It's not a county road, but it's, you know, a major collector of traffic from one side of the town to the other. Robinson Lane would be another one. But under the prior comprehensive plan, they were identified as collector roads, whereas the current comprehensive plan does not identify those as collector roads.
Right. And Cedar Hill was a collector road
Right.
under that previous, you know, legislation,
And
right?
correct me if I'm wrong, so the term collector road is arbitrary now in 2022, okay? In 1975, a collector road may have been totally different than today. Traffic has significantly increased. This existing section of the code is a way, an antiquated way for, and correct me if I'm wrong, for applicants to seek a special permit process rather than go for a rezone. Is that correct?
Correct.
So my position has been that if multifamily housing is going to be built, the town board should be deciding if that particular parcel will be fit for multifamily housing. This particular statute that we are discussing this evening usurps that process, correct?
The town board issues the special permit, but it is constrained with, you know, a special permit constrains the discretion of the town board as opposed to a rezoning application.
Let me word it like this. So this particular section allows for multifamily housing to be built on a parcel that is not zoned for multifamily housing. Is that correct?
Yes, it's for single family.
That's why it is on for discussion this evening.
And sir, would it keep its R40 if even if you put special permit? Would it still be listed as an R40?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's gray. It's a gray area. And we're looking at legislation that was enacted in 1980, section by section. This is nothing out of the ordinary from what we've done on other sections of the code. And I was here in 2010 when we did the master plan. A lot's changed since 2010. You know, this is not something that was addressed in 2010. Collector roads in 2010 were, in my opinion, not as congested as they are today. I'm sure that no one can disagree with that. So we have to continuously look at these sections. And trust me, this is not the only section that we need to look at.
Right.
But this happens to be the section we're looking at right now.
Yeah. So it's in this case, it's the process that we're looking at. we do have planned, for, next several months, a number of other code changes, code amendments that need to take place, including water and sewer, water source protection, which is one of my things that I'm putting forward, to have more protection of the water at the source, and a variety of other things that we're going to be doing. So the codes are antiquated, and so we're in the process of trying to clean them up, as far as to make them more relevant, consistent with 2022,
Today,
quite
that's right.
honestly,
Yep.
right?
Right.
So that's what we're doing. So this is, part of that process. Okay. Other questions, comments? Yeah, please, come on up. Yeah, he had been up before, so I just let him stay seated.
Yeah, my name is Ricky Dixon, 215 Cedar Hill Road, and I'm for the amendment, and I thank you guys for even looking it up, because they were trying to go past it. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other comments?
Martin Vanderhel, 324 Cedar Hill Road. And
What was the name again? I'm sorry.
Martin Vanderhel.
Okay, Martin.
And after listening to you and explain how this process works in the legislation, I am for you striking down the legislation and, keeping the quality of life here. That's what I came here, moved up here from New York City to get away from that, and the quality of life and the open spaces, and I hope you will continue to keep that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Don Donardo, 21 Maple Path. I urge you to kick this project down the road, and we all know that there's two more right behind it, or maybe even the same time, and you should be looking at water. This project, I have 1,681 feet of my property butts to this project. I get 3.5 gallons a minute of water now. You should really hear some of that out before you even think about this, or just kick it down the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Good evening. John
Good
Gorman,
evening.
6 Thompson Terrace. I just want to thank you guys for being proactive with this and going and tightening up the loose ends for a law that was made in 1980. That's when I moved up here. It was in the 80s, and Route 9, was a small road. Things have changed. You literally crossed the tracks at New Hamburg. It was a dirt parking lot. And developers, after seeing the explosion in Beacon and the explosion all around the Dutchess County area and us becoming a travel hub, we need to protect our current citizens and not worry about who wants to move in with these new developments. People moved here for a reason, and this proposal will help us keep the reason we live here. So I ask that you all fight for us. Thank you.
You're here. Okay. Yeah, please, come on up.
Linda Rappaport, 201 Pine Ridge Drive. So let's say I was the person who wanted this development. What would I have to do to make it happen now that this legislation is being changed?
No, Mr. Hand, why don't you address it from a legal point of view, the process?
Well, there's a couple of different options under our code. They could ask for a rezone.
Could they get one?
It's up to the town board.
Okay.
There are provisions for, again, the property owner has a right to develop a conventional subdivision. So
What do you mean by conventional?
So this is R40, so that means that they can build 1-acre lots.
Okay.
So, the proposal here does not eliminate, the applicant's ability to develop this parcel.
Right, but there's a difference between a 1-acre plot and 240 or...
So, the applicant can speak better to the number of units, but I believe this section actually requires a 25% reduction in the number of units over, is it 25%?
It's 25% of the total density is allowed to be single-family homes.
Oh, okay.
The rest
So-
has to be multifamily, but the density.
Has to be multifamily?
Correct, but the density impacts are much less with multifamily and if following this code. That going with we have a proposal for 90 single-family homes.
How is the density less with multifamily homes? I mean, there's more cars, more people.
Well, so it's actually not.
It's not.
So it's the same number of units, but it's on a, so if I have,
What do you mean
if I
by
have-
density? Population density or?
correct. So for example, if I have 6 single-family dwellings, okay? I can put them in one building on a quarter acre, or I can take those 6 and create 6 different houses and spread them out over 6 acres.
Right.
So what this code provision permits is those 6 dwelling units to be in a single building on a quarter acre rather than spread out over 6 acres.
But that may not be something that's desirable. Yeah, it's,
So,
Right, just to clarify, Jim, though, the current code that we're discussing right now allows for what versus the conventional approach outside this statute?
so this code permits
when you say this code, you're referring to what?
240-50, the provision that is intended to be repealed. Permits, so the maximum permitted number of dwelling units in a design residential development shall be determined by dividing the total land area by the normally required minimum lot size for the zoning district in which it is located and subtracting 20%. So to do the math easily, a 40-acre R40 zoning, in essence, permits a lot of 40,000 square feet, which is roughly 1 acre. So for argument's sake, we're going to say that it would be 1 acre. So on a conventional
How many
subdivision,
acres is the larger proposal?
this,
This parcel is 100,
Mr. Supervisor,
Yeah.
most folks should know what this application is, because people are misstating. what it's
Would
saying.
you identify yourself?
My name's Kenneth M. Steger. I represent the applicant only as of last week, when their application was filed without knowledge that this town was considering abolishing this section. So they're here, and I think rather than have folks in the audience ask them what their project looks like, I think everybody in this audience deserves the right to see what it looks like instead of reading somebody's political nonsense coming across the internet. If you'd
Well,
like to read it-
I'm not engaging in political nonsense right now.
But we
So
can have that time,
I would like to be
Mr.
able to
Steger, but,
follow my line of questioning
I'm going to answer
Yeah.
this piecemeal.
so
But,
that I can
okay,
understand
But that's
what's
fine,
going on.
a resident has a question, and we try to accommodate, Linda's, question. So, I think it's a simple thing to answer,
I'm just, and again, the
We have
section
another
doesn't
chance.
apply just to this parcel. It
Right.
applies townwide. So for example, if you had a 100-acre parcel,
Right.
under this section, so on a conventional subdivision in an R40 zone, a 100-acre parcel, you could basically build 100 single-family dwellings on
On one-
individual 1-acre lots.
Right, okay, I got that.
Under this proposal, you could build 80. So you would build, and it would be a mix of no more than 25% single-family homes, and then the balance would be in multifamily, up to 6 dwelling units in a building, and the remaining area is required to be maintained as open space.
All right, so does that mean that you can get 100 families in these smaller,
No, it'd be 80.
8 families?
80. As
80.
opposed to what, so
Oh,
as
because-
of right, they could do 100. Under this proposal, they could do, under this code, they could do 80.
And what do they do with the rest of the space?
It's open space. Green
Permanent
forest.
Open space.
Yeah.
Like green space?
Yes.
Yes. That's what the code.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the genesis of this code back in the 80s was to try to cluster and create green space around these developments. The problem, in my opinion, is that we don't necessarily see an applicant who has a multifamily project coming forward to the town board for a rezone because they can get a special permit on an R40 zone and build multifamily housing within that zone. That's my concern, okay? Because I want it to be fully open and transparent if it's going to be a rezone. If we're going to change a parcel to allow for apartment buildings, then we should have a rezone. That's my personal opinion. This particular statute allows for a workaround with a special permit. Okay, that might have been appropriate, 40 years ago, but right now we're revisiting that section. That's what the discussion is tonight. And correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good
Yes,
evening.
good evening.
My name is Thomas Creparo. I live at 25 Kendall Drive in the town of Wappingers. To address what the attorney said and what someone on the board said, the application hasn't been put in yet? Well, now my question is, and I don't know legality, but if they applied for it already, and you already have that statute on the books that allows them to make the application, what would repealing this do for their application?
No, I don't want to have any conjecture on that.
I'm asking you
because
legally what
probably a lawsuit. Probably a
So
lawsuit.
they can say, we applied before
But-
you repealed it, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll, application will have
But
to
we,
go-
we've gone through a process
Right.
over the last 2 months
Let's
to
hope we
amend.
can do the right thing,
Yeah,
and
so-
like everyone else said, we would hope you would repeal it, so something like this won't happen again.
Yeah.
And just to be transparent, again, this application has not arrived on my desk, nor my colleagues yet. So that said, I'm sure the lawyers are going to have to,
It's been submitted already. So
it may have
whether
been
you haven't
submitted,
seen it or not,
but again, it has
That's
not.
what we put in as the
Right.
last agenda item for amended, plan, so that was what's there. I think, in light of the discussion and the, good turnout by our residents, we'll allow after the discussion of the residents, per the request just received by Mr. Stenger, to make some comments on the code. They're here, and to share some insight on the information. That doesn't mean, that we, do anything about that, tonight, despite, some attempts to say to the contrary. What happens, though, if the town board has to make a legislative decision, and that has to be based, by a process on facts and substance, or else if there were a lawsuit, it would be overturned, most likely, for the lack of a legislative basis. So what we're trying to do tonight is to collect feedback, from the community and from everyone on what the concerns are. We have, of course, Dutchess County Planning, which has said no to the repeal and has recommended, as Mr. Horan said, to instead, initiate a review and update of process and, definitions, which then puts a different burden on the town board from that legislative process. But if there was to be a decision, whether it's tonight or the next meeting with respect to the repeal of that legislation, then obviously, there could be other challenges, to it. As a lawyer, in my other job, I know that all too well, right, that that can happen. So, but we're fact-finding, right? We're trying to get the input, tonight from everyone that's out here, and we appreciate that because that's what this town board is based on its decisions, and no predetermination, as Councilman Bill has said.
but I understand
Yeah.
the board is, elected by the people of the town, and hopefully the board will follow what the town's wishes are. Thank you so much.
Thank you for speaking. Any more comments, please? Yes. Yeah, come on up.
Gentlemen, I'm Gregory Haldeman from 15 Lenny Court, and I'd just like to go on record as saying I support the change to the law so that they cannot circumvent the town board on this matter. I believe that the proposed projects are overutilization of the property. I don't believe the infrastructure we have can support that. Old Hopewell Road, if you've ever been at the intersection of Route 9 and Old Hopewell Road, at about 5 o'clock at night, you're going to sit through about 3 traffic lights before you get through. And imagine if you have a couple of thousand more residents on that road, it's just going to be a nightmare.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Teresa Baker from 123 Edge Hill Drive. And I don't know if I'm speaking long before I'm supposed to, but will there be consideration, as you're figuring this out, on the wastewater treatment plants? What's in their infrastructure, and will it be able to hold these multifamily dwellings? Will it have to be upgraded? Who pays for that? And at the equipment that's there now, is there any existing reports on how old that equipment is? And will maybe the wastewater treatment now can collect as much as these multifamilies, but will the equipment last? How old is it, and does that have to be renewed? So will that be, I know you had said water is what you're interested in.
No, water and sewer.
Sewage,
We're
okay,
interested in
yeah,
both.
so.
You know, town board.
Because I know that it's what, like 60 gallons per day per person
Yeah.
for water.
So the, to answer your question, right, if the applicants for any of these developments anywhere throughout the town were to go into town as of right, then generally speaking, they're going to try to do well water and septic, right? What we've tried, well water and septic. So if, I believe, and I'm not speaking for anyone, but if they were to go in with that, it was 90 houses as council, Haran said, then perhaps it's septic and sewer. What developers have proposed and what we try as a board to do is to get developers to pay, if they are to go in, if the approvals are given, is to go in and develop a sewer and water line structure that would feed into the town's municipal water and sewer as a benefit, to the community. I know there's been some discussion about that, and I saw on some of the comments that they're quoting Mr. Casella and the controller of saying that we're awash with money with strong fund balance. Well, that's not the case. We don't, if we were just to do sewer and what, let me explain, okay?
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is to look at that. Water-wise, just to answer the two questions, water-wise, we have more than enough capacity. It's then a matter of getting the monies, to go and build out the water lines. And we try to do that on a stepped approach so that the burden for the members of the United Wappinger Water District and the United Wappinger Sewer District that have to bear the cost, it doesn't come out of the rest of the town, is minimized, right? So the people that are on water and sewer, like I am, like many of you are, many of you aren't, I know here, but in other areas of the town, then we don't think it's fair to, put that burden on them, and so we try to get grant money. With respect to the sewage, if that was to be, sewer lines were to be put in and the developments, let's say in Cedar Hill, were to go to town sewer, then that would be presumably pumped up. We haven't seen any plans, as Councilman Bill has said, pumped up into the United Wappinger Sewer District, which would ultimately go into Tri-Municipal. Okay, Tri-Municipal, as we know from participating in this, is due for upgrades, generally speaking. So based on those upgrades, there would be more than enough capacity to handle this and some other developments based on just what we understand for numbers, right? So we don't see it increasing the burden anymore, no matter where that sewer or water were to go into the town.
Okay, so now.
No, I know that. That's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. If they were to do the 90 homes as of right, there would still be wells and water. If they were to come in the development, as I understand it, and I'll be interested to hear from the applicant, they would bring in sewer and water and then make, I think, even a water tower that then could be provided for others to tap into, or the town could look at expending some more monies to do that. I'm just explaining what I understand without having seen the application, that's all.
But now also, even if they went with septic
Right.
systems, that still has to go to a wastewater treatment plant.
No.
Where does it go then when
Ground.
when it's pumped out of a septic system?
That goes, if the septic system is clean, by a private company.
And where does that go?
Wherever they
That
dump
goes
it.
to
I don't know where they take that.
That
Not
goes-
in the town. It doesn't go into our system.
But it does go to a wastewater treatment plant.
Someplace, I assume, but I don't know.
But-
Maybe it's fertilizer, I don't know.
Right, no,
I really don't
it's
know.
not fertilized. I worked at a wastewater
Yeah.
treatment plant,
Right.
and I know that
Yeah.
it goes to a
Well,
wastewater
it-
treatment
it-
plant.
As far as I know, it
Right.
does not go,
Okay.
and Mr. Rangit's into tri-municipal,
Yeah, I don't believe tri-municipal.
No, we have never seen any
private.
report on that, right?
So just one thing for the public, regarding, under town law, towns are different than cities and villages. Under town law, when water and sewer districts are extended, so if the property is not currently included within a water or sewer district, the cost of extending water or sewer to that property is borne by that property, not by the residents of the town or other people. So, and that goes to, existing homes. So if you're going to add water to existing homes, the cost of extending water mains to put them in the street to supply existing homes, typically the cost of those mains are borne by the property owners that get connected.
Right. But now,
And then with respect to, as you said, for example, a sewer treatment plant, if you're in a sewer treatment plant, if a development requires expansion, so they would have to pay for the cost of the collection mains to the property, and if there's insufficient treatment capacity at the treatment plant, then that project would be responsible to pay for the cost of expanding the treatment plant.
so the contractor will be
The
responsible?
developer.
Developer, yes.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's what I want.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Teresa. Any more comments, questions?
If we can just circle back again, just to refocus, the public hearing is on the piece of legislation specifically. I don't want to get off too much of a tangent
Just
here.
a question.
Go ahead,
To
please.
follow up on that. I know like the Chelsea Ridge Apartments on Route 9D, when that was built, there was no water and sewer. They put their own sewer treatment plant.
Correct.
They have their own wells. Is there any recourse for the board to ask a new development to do the same? Or do we have to put them into the town water and sewer district?
I think-
Don't have to.
I think it's a matter of the Board of Health, Department of
It's
Health.
really up to DEC
Yeah,
and the Board of Health.
DEC and the Board of Health, which has been more restrictive, so,
Is that basically why the
But-
county is asking you not to repeal this?
I
No.
We
don't,
don't know. They
No,
have
I
nothing to
mean-
do with the,
No.
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 Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The county's response, we should make available to the public so
Yeah.
they can read it. There's no secrets here. With respect to the county's response, they have concerns about the housing needs assessment that was done in the county recently, so they want us to review and amend the section rather than repeal it.
So one of the issues I have with that, though, is I think that survey is flawed. I think they were missing a lot of apartment complexes that weren't part of that discussion. I can tell you Village Crest, as an example, was not one of the ones that's included. So I think it's somewhat flawed, not to say that they don't need it, but I don't think the need is as great as what the county's stating here. Again, they were missing several apartment complexes when they did the survey.
Right, and I would also argue that their response is not necessarily consistent with the foundational principles of what we're talking about tonight. They're looking at it from a totally different angle, that we have to, stay open-minded with respect to housing and multifamily development. I get that, but that's really not what we're doing. Our purpose here tonight is to tighten up the code so that we don't inadvertently end up with a multifamily complex on an R40 zone.
Right.
Agreed.
Great.
So how can you...
Identify yourself, please.
Rich Johnson, 19 Scottsy. How can you end up with the wrong housing? It doesn't go through you guys, even 2450? You don't have to approve anything?
No, there is a special permit process that the attorney can, right now, under the existing 240.50, there's a special permit process which deals with the formula we just talked about with density.
But just, again,
So
to keep it in simple terms,
240-50
'cause-
goes to the town board as a special permit. However, special permits are reviewed under a different standard than a rezone application.
What do you do, take your tie off on that standard? Or, I mean, what's it's the same people. It's the same standard.
So a special permit is considered to be a use that is permitted by zoning.
Okay.
So
but
it's a
But
default.
everything that you're getting here tonight is an emotional reaction to a potential development.
Yes.
And you're going to change a law based on that.
Well, it's not.
Doesn't, yes, you are.
It's not,
because you're
hold
asking-
on, hold on.
No, no, you hold on, excuse me, sir. You're asking for the town, people, Mr. Protect the Butterflies here, great job from his perspective, right? You're asking them to voice their opinion. They're only voicing their opinion on the development. They don't even know the development.
Well, I would argue, sir, they're voicing their opinion based on information they've received that is not necessarily accurate.
And you've had to say how many times, please stay focused on 2450?
Correct. Correct.
Why?
Why?
Because they're focused on the development.
But we don't even have, sir, we don't even have the development in front of us. It's not an actionable item.
That's my point.
Okay.
Okay, so Dutchess County says, hey, maybe you shouldn't repeal it. Maybe you should think about modifying it. There is a project, and we know it's coming. If it's not on your desk, it's probably on its way. Maybe stuck in Santa Claus's mailbag, right? It's on its way. Well, why not use 2450? Prove it's either right or wrong. You have a project right in your hands. Rather than emotionally take all of these people's feedback, not even knowing anything about this whole addition or whatever it is, this development. Right?
Well, we know there's multiple projects,
You guys have
sir.
it right in your hands.
Sir, there's multiple projects that have expressed interest in developing in a given area. Okay?
So we're not just talking about this development over here, whatever that is.
No.
No.
Oh, there's other developments.
There's other projects.
Oh.
There's 3 in total.
So you have several projects.
There's more.
There are several projects in a geographic area,
And they
and there's
will all-
also other projects outside the geographic area
And-
that could potentially not come to this town for a full rezone on a parcel and utilize 240.50 to get around the town board zoning.
You keep saying not come to the town.
Okay?
You would not have the ability to vote down what they were doing or change what they were doing?
On a special permit, it is a different process than a rezone.
So you don't have the ability, or you do?
We have different abilities, not the same power as rejecting a rezone.
Okay, so you do, I believe you still have the power to make it happen the way you want it to.
Okay, well, that's your opinion.
Am I really wrong then?
I mean,
So there
one
is
of
a
the-
way to circumvent you guys totally?
So that it's not, so the difference between a special permit and a rezone is a rezone is considered to be a legislative act. So under New York law, where a town board acts as a legislature, it has basically, I won't say unfettered discretion, but it is the standard is what's called a rational basis. They have to have a rational basis to do what they're doing. On a special permit use is considered to be a permitted use under the zoning code. And there's a standard that needs to be met, a set of criteria, and if the applicant meets those criteria, there is a presumption that they will get approved. So,
But
basically,
you can
from
still
a legal challenge point of view, if a rezone application is denied, basically, it cannot be challenged legally. Certainly, people can bring an action, but the law in New York basically says a legislative body can do what a legislative body does. Under a special permit, you're acting more like an administrative agency. You go through, check the boxes, and if the applicant has checked all the boxes, now there's a different standard for review for the town board. It's what's called arbitrary, capricious, or abusive discretion. So there's different legal standards.
And I assume you would use the same standards to still approve that project or not?
No, they're different standards
totally
for
different.
for
Totally
rezone and special permit have two different legal standards.
That's right.
And that's the reason for the proposed change.
Oh, boy, that sounds like it's very gray, because I don't think you gentlemen would allow anything to be built that wasn't proper.
Well, that's,
So you're making it sound like...
that could be true, sir,
we
but,
go behind the scenes here and do something that wouldn't...
well, the statement you're making, sir.
It just does sounds that way. I
The
know
statement you're making is...
I know you're not saying that.
Right, so one of the most important responsibilities of a town board member, besides the budget, is zoning, okay? That is where we have discretion with respect to rezone, with respect to looking at proposals that don't fit into a zone and entertaining them based on feedback, right? We do not want to be in a position where we see R40 zoning and an applicant can go around the rezone process and multifamily housing can land on that parcel. That's my position.
And I totally disagree with that. I think
Okay.
you guys, again, you have this emotional case here.
Okay, look, do you have anything more to add? I'm sorry, Rick, we cut you off, but you're repeating, your comments, and there are other people here that may want to speak.
I will back off.
Okay, thank you.
I do not think we're going around. I think those are poorly chosen words, and I think you guys have put yourself in a bad position right now because there is a project on the docket right now that wants to leverage a code that's there. The gentleman back here expressed that. And now the change is coming to repeal that law. It's just bad positioning.
That's your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not only his, here.
Okay.
There's,
Go ahead.
I have some comments on,
Identify yourself again. They may not have heard it first time.
I'm Kenneth M. Stenger. I represent the applicant. And for about the last 8 days, I represent the applicant, because 8 days ago, the applicant tried to file its application here not knowing that this statute.
Point of order, can you please address the board?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'd like to make sure everyone hears, but I'd like to just really address just the proceedings here, and then if possible,
Yeah, just
finally, I'd like
address
to
the
introduce my
proceedings right
client.
now. And there is a camera up here, so you are on camera.
Okay, that's fine. Hi. Let me just work on that a little bit. Okay. So I have a question from a point of order, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
This process required a referral to the planning board. And I know that the referral was made on November 10th. Have you received a written receipt from the planning board yet today?
We have, yes.
We have.
Yes.
When?
So we've received from, the Secretary of the Town of Wappinger Planning Board. At the Planning Board meeting held on December 5th, 2022, the board voted and authorized that I send you this memorandum. After their review, it was decided that the Planning Board has no objection to the adoption of the local law.
What was the date of that vote?
Here, you may have a copy if
Thank
you
you.
wish.
Came today at 6:07 p.m.
Here's a copy.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was Monday's meeting, December 5th.
Oh, December.
Right, but the email came 6:07 p.m.
So we have that on December 12th, so that box is checked. We don't have any reasoning on this memo from the planning board to you as to why they took the position they've taken. But I think it's important, there's a couple things here that get lost in what I know is heartfelt emotion and concern. I know that piece of land very well at the top of Cedar Hill. My grandparents lived there for 20 years. Spent a lot of time on the top of that hill. So I get the comments I'm hearing, but what I'm not hearing is that anyone is fully informed as to the possibility of what development might look like at that location.
Can you first address the legality issues of the
I can.
repeal and so forth?
You have the report that came in from the county of Dutchess. And maybe we should read some of it together because it sets the task for this board. This board has to make a determination if it were to repeal this code, that the repeal of that code would be consistent with your comprehensive plan. And in fact, your proposed resolution says that it is not consistent with your comprehensive plan. But the proposed code language doesn't say how, why, or where. It just says it reaches a conclusion without laying out the legal basis for making that conclusion. And that's a factual basis. That's a problem in your proposed resolution. It's a problem that the county looked at and, in fact, honed in on. They're not looking from 30,000 miles up. They're looking right at what you're doing. And so they say the following. Section 24050 could also progress a stated objective of the town's comprehensive plan.
which is to increase the variety of housing types to help alleviate the problem of a housing mismatch in the town. Although the legislative intent of this proposed local law purports that 24050 is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan, it was not specified how, and it is unclear to us based on our reading. We understand that some terminology in Section 24050 is outdated. However, instead of repealing the section entirely, the town board should instead initiate a review and update of the process and definitions. Our department would be happy to work with the town to draft the suggested updates. I didn't write that. They wrote it, which makes my argument. The difficulty for you on the board, and I truly do not envy ever your position in these matters, is that there is a rule of law that we all are bound by. There is fear, there is pride, and there's a lot of emotion, especially when the facts of any potential real application are not known. But in the abstract, we must follow the law. And here, this county letter says to you, folks, you're coming up short on telling us why this is inconsistent. So in the end, when you do write a resolution, if you do, and if you do pass it, that resolution ought to identify the inconsistencies, because if it doesn't, it becomes my job easier. And it ought to be based on what you're hearing coming out of this audience tonight, and you haven't heard one thing about the inconsistency except for one person who read a quote that was put out by a potential candidate for supervisor in this town as part of his ongoing campaign to get his name out.
Please not get into that politics.
So, well, I'm not involved in the politics in this town. I'm not involved in politics at all anymore, thank goodness. But the bottom line here is that's a problem. And now what that also means is that you have to have 4 votes to repeal, not 3. 1 vote has to be 4-1. Can't be 3-2 anymore. The second thing is, with respect to the EAF, actually, there's one thing about this that I found interesting. I didn't know this statute existed. I can't say that I spent time reading the town of Wappinger zoning code. But what this does, and Councilman Beal, this goes to your point, and I understand your point. Look, we have to have clear ideas. We're going to put apartments over here. We're going to put residential housing over here. And that's such an understandable position. But when I'm listening tonight to folks talk about their concerns, it seems to me what the concern is, well, we're bringing apartments into single-family neighborhoods. What this statute does, and it does it with giving you a lot of power to do it, it encourages the development of single-family dwellings and apartments as the same, so that they support each other in the communities that they grow. It's interesting. I've never seen that before. I've always seen what you suggested. Hey, we're going to rezone, you're going to put apartments over there, and then people get up and say, whoa, I don't want all those apartments here in my neighborhood. But this statute allows you to do something creative, should you wish to, which is to look at a plan and see whether it's adequate to address that concern by creating a community of single-family dwellings and apartments or / condominiums, so that they have an economic self-interest in maintaining the integrity of what they build. That's going to be the subject of the application you're going to see, but that's a unique facet. I've never seen that before. And Councilman, I appreciate your position about how things should be, but I wonder, in just thinking now while we're here, the folks that I've heard, and I think they've expressed some very heartfelt concern, whoa, we're going to have all these apartments here. I don't know what other applications may or may not look like. I don't know if they're being made under this statute or not. But the statute's a unique opportunity for the town's leadership to try something different, to allow a smaller community of interrelating interests with different housing styles. It's an idea. It's an opportunity. I'm going to respectfully refer you to the applicant to show how she or they would like to do this. And I heard the big thing I heard today was about open space and don't destroy that 200 acres. And boy, don't you know, that rings a bell. I've lived here all my life. and I've seen the development, but here's the deal. Under the statute, under the current zoning of 40, R40 and some R80, you get a layout of 90 houses, 2 miles of road, and out of 140 acres, 50 acres of preserved space. Under the statute, you can get a similar count of houses and apartments with a third of a mile of road, and you preserve 100 acres. So I don't know that everybody here knows that there are these advantages, and if they knew these advantages existed, they might have an interest in balancing them or looking at them in the context of what has got their concern to the point where they're here this evening. The last thing I wanted to say was that with respect to the EAF, which I looked at before I came here, I think that if this repeal proceeding was taking place in a vacuum, where there was no other fact to be considered, the EAF is properly concluded, right? I mean, if you're looking to repeal the statute, you're not building anything, you're not causing environmental activity. But with all due respect, when there is a proposal on the table, it's a fact. And it's something I think that I would urge you to consider. And first thing, let's make one thing clear, Mr. Beal, that this application is filed. So it was filed. It was not filed in anticipation of this evening. Trust me, I didn't want to be here. I didn't know this even existed when we filed it. It came as a complete surprise to my client. It came as a complete surprise to me to get the phone call and say, you got a week to help. But you have something now that is kind of a living demonstration of the possibilities of this statute. Not asking anyone here to say, because this is not about the application. I think the supervisors, I'm sorry, about my client's application. You're all correct. It's about the statute. Mr. Horan's correct. It's about the statute. But this application is a living demonstration of how this application might work. And it's a living demonstration of its possibility to avoid, I think, some of the self-confirming fears that are implicit in just zoning multiple families over here and residential over here, instead of allowing for an opportunity for the two to exist side by side in a planned community where they support each other. Some folks may not like that as an idea, but that's not the point. The point is to show how the statute might work. And I think that when you have an alternative to look at, I think when you're doing your EAF, it's not the same as if you have no to look at. And I think that that one of your tasks in assessing the negative declaration that you're proposing is to look at the impacts that are implicit in this application and compare them to the impacts of an imaginary application that is created under an R40, right? So under the R40, you're going to have wells and septics. You're going to have 90 houses, 2 miles of road. You're going to have 50 acres left of forever green territory. Under the application you're going to see, you're going to have, I think it's 110 units of residential, of houses and apartments, but houses and condominiums with a third of a mile of road, with 100 acres of forever green, 100 acres that the creatures that we just heard spoken about so eloquently earlier can remain undisturbed. And it's not to sell the application in this context. In this context, I am urging you, or I will point out to you that I think the argument that I will be making in court is that you really got to look at what the alternatives are as to if you let this statute work when you're doing your environmental environment. And I know that Mr. Horan will give you the best legal advice he can. That's just my opinion. And my opinion also is that we might all be better if the lawyers would sit down and shut up, and we'd let someone tell us what the possibilities are for developing that property. And if it's okay with the board, I'd like to introduce the applicant and Amy Bomaderry to speak to the board about what the possibilities of the existing statute are. You're not here to approve an application, but you're here to see how that statute might work. And this is a perfect, it wasn't our plan to file an application and run it to this buzzsaw. We thought this statute was without controversy. But we'd like to show you what the possibilities are, and I'd like to be able to introduce my client to do that.
So can we just make one quick comment on the dates? Sorry that your applicant didn't know that until a week ago that we were repealing this, but we actually did this November 5th. It's been over a month.
We didn't know it, Mr. Councilman. I appreciate your position here. I'm not saying that.
I'm just saying that because in one of the letters you sent, you actually referenced November 5th, hearing about it. So I just want you to be very clear that it's been 4 to 5 weeks since your client has known about it.
Well, maybe our memories are different, but nonetheless, I'd like to have an opportunity for you to see the statute.
Board have any
Thank you.
problems? Do you have any problems with?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely.
Listen, I have no objection to hearing the idea from the applicant, but again, I want to stay focused on the fact that we are here in a public hearing for the purposes of repealing a antiquated section of code.
Okay.
What's that? It is public comment. This, all right. Agreed. Agreed. They have a right to comment as well.
You might just need to put that on chair.
You can come up after this. You can come up after this.
Okay. I was under the impression that the public had no further comments prior to the, okay, well, I'm sure you'll have more comments after this, so.
Yeah.
Might as well get it out there.
No,
Good evening,
absolutely.
Amy Bomaderry with Day and Stokosa for the applicant.
All right. Go ahead, Amy.
We initially started looking at this section of the code, and we met with Councilwoman Bettina, and we discussed the potential for developing this parcel. It's a 139-acre parcel. So as of right, this parcel could be, the layout you're looking at right now has 90 single-family home lots. They would each have individual wells, and you're looking at about 2 miles of roadway.
Where is Cedar Hill Road on that?
Cedar Hill Road is along the bottom of the parcel.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I said earlier. After then the residents here can make more comments. Yeah, and ask questions too.
Well, just want to kind of know where we are.
Okay, so carrying on. The homes in a layout like this, you would have the impact of the individual wells for each lot, and you would have a potential starting home price of $730,000. You're looking at about 73 school-aged children.
I want to know where Cedar Hill Road is.
Cedar Hill Road is here. That's our frontage along Cedar Hill.
Okay,
I don't know what the address is in the middle there.
But this is very important to me.
Amy, the map is what, north, south, east, west, and what is the
North is going to the right on this map.
north is to the right. We will. This is just to introduce it.
It's not deliberately confusing. What we're trying to show is that you have a potential layout of 90 lots and 2 miles of road. So that's based on an as of right. That's with an application to only the planning board. The planning board could make the decision based on this because it wouldn't require any waivers or variances. It wouldn't be referred to the zoning board, nor would it be referred to the town board. This would go in as an application to the planning board. The planning board would make the decision on whether this was appropriate and if it could be approved. There's a minimal amount of wetlands and a minimal amount of steep slopes. those areas have been discounted, and then we arrive at this number for 90 parcels, but we have an actual mathematical potential of 121 parcels. So even this density is not as dense as it could be.
Are those roads you're going to, or do they exist already? But they're not there already.
Those roads are all, if you were to develop it that way, that's what the roads would look like. That's not what they're proposing. So these roads are, this is what you call an as-of-right application, if you use the R40 zone. You know, I mean, it's like, you walked in, we're not proposing that, they're not proposing that, but we wanted you to see what it would look like if we came in and we were toll brothers or somebody, that's what it would look like. And all that, and you're right, whoever asked about the wetlands, good question.
But they're also wells.
That,
They had water.
we understand.
This is what anyone can come in and do, and that is what they can make an application for, and that could be the fight you could have with those people, not with us. That's not what we're proposing.
So that's theoretical, and you're saying each of those would be $740,000.
Right, that's based on market study, that is theoretical, it is not what we're proposing, because under the statute that we're operating under, we can propose something else entirely different.
So this is for comparison.
Well, no, this is not comparison. I'm going to let Amy take this back in a second, but I think it's important for people to see what we're talking about. I mean, I get when you don't know what's happening, why you'd be afraid. I heard someone say 165 units. There's not 165 units anywhere in this. So here's what Amy and John, my friend Chris, are proposing. They're proposing a smaller community that's combined of single-family dwellings, yes, as you can see, coming off the Cedar Hill Road, and then apartment condominiums, I'm sorry, no, it's right here.
The same direction that we did on that other map is like this.
Okay.
So if you hold it this way, it's the same as that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep, that's Cedar Hill and that's Cedar Hill. It still ends on Cedar Hill. But you've got a third of a mile of road, not 2 miles of road. You all know what that means, right? And if we've got...
What does that mean?
Well, you put 2 miles of road into natural environment, you can imagine the damage you're causing to the folks that Ralph was talking about, right? So this statute doesn't mean you have to adopt this, but it's possible under this statute.
So all the land above.
Yeah.
That would be
no longer buildable?
That would be forever green.
That would be forever green. That would be forever green. And I'm not telling you that this is not, I'm just showing this to you to see how the statute could work for you. Well, it may not, but it still is. It's a chance. So this 100 acres would remain forever green. You know, in this particular application, the developer would want to make an application to the town at its own expense to bring water to this project rather than use wells. That would generate an additional $350,000 of revenue to this town, as well as bring water to places where water is now currently existing.
Right, we're looking for reference where the heck we are.
Well, you know, Cedar Hill Road, right? That runs right down to Old Hopewell. So you know where Cedar Hill is, Old Hopewell, right?
Yeah.
All right, fine. So this is just up off the road on the left-hand side of that?
If you're heading up Old Hopewell Road, it's on the right-hand side.
Power lines are basically just below. Power lines on the right-hand side.
This is Van White without the hair.
The power lines are here.
Here, show me, maybe where it is.
Power lines are here.
The left side is over at basically 223 Cedar Hill is where that road comes in, right across the street from my house, is where that comes in.
All right, so
Where's the gun club on that?
On the left, all the way down.
Further down, this way.
So it's not Shamrock, it's not anything else, it's just what we've got.
Right.
And so I'm just showing this to you not to say, look, we're not here to sell that, but that's the possibility. That's the flexibility that statute provides. And it does, you want to know something? It puts pressure on the board to take on a job. It's easier to just put everybody in a box. All the apartments will go around this side of town, and all the houses will be on this side of town, and how's that work? It's not so good for us. So that's the flexibility that we have.
Okay, let's move along. Yeah.
Other folks are looking for
Few more minutes.
in terms of their housing. Look, that's what the statute how it works. I'm not suggesting to you that thing that's presented here is the thing that's going to be approved, that this repeal doesn't take place. It is the application. And I'm going to let Amy get back to you and explain.
So the ownership is not dictated by law. They could be condos, they could be owner-occupied. Single-family homes presumably would be owner-occupied. We can't say that they have to be rentals or they can't be rentals. We can't restrict that at all. B&B is not going to fly there.
But let me just address that question, because look, the truth is that when folks say apartment complexes coming into my house, my neighborhoods, people are concerned about property values. What I think is interesting about this project, again, this is a possible thing under the statute. Anyone could come in with a better idea under the statute. But what I like about this is this. The values, these houses in here are going to go between $450 and $500. I know that because I represent folks up in LaGrange who build houses in the same size lots and same square foot houses. They go from anywhere between $450 and $500. The majority of this project, as you can see, or a big piece of this project, half of it, is that housing. You can't, and if you're not going to build an apartment complex that is economically compatible with the single-family dwelling component, it's not going to work. The developer has every incentive to be certain that both pieces of both legs of the stool, so to speak, work together, otherwise the stool's going to fall down. Because if your apartments are not commensurate in quality with your housing, then you're not going to get $450, $500. If you don't get $450, $500, none of it works. So, again, I'm not selling an application. That's not what I do for a living. But I want to show to you the possibilities under that statute. Because I read the internet the last 3 hours before I came here. No one's talking about possibilities. They're all talking about fear. Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's finish up with that, and then there's some other comments.
You can take a look at that quality of work. You go up to Kitchen Commons.
What do you say when that lawyer sit down and show?
No, I appreciate the way you're explaining this, sir.
So,
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Mid-Hudson Development Corp is currently building apartments on Route 90 in the town of Poughkeepsie. They are units like this. There are 6 two-bedroom units in each of these buildings. 6 two-bedroom units in each of those buildings, which is...
If you would like to come see them, if you're welcome to do so, ask John. He'll take you. He won't work these houses all together.
So in the design development proposal, there are 113 dwelling units. 28 of those are single-family homes. 85 are within the multifamily buildings. This proposal right now is based on 2 bedrooms in each dwelling unit in the multifamily. The benefit, there's a number of benefits to going with the design residential. The fees that are going to be generated are substantially more than they would be for a single-family home. The environmental impact is significantly less because you have so much less impervious. You have a mixture of housing types that would fit a wide array of community. You have a situation in Dutchess County where we have a very low vacancy rate, and it drives the prices up. So when somebody comes back from college or wants to move out of their parents' basement, they have nowhere they can afford to move into. So this provides a mix of starter home level. I know that sounds crazy at that price, but but that's what it is, and that's what it is in this area. And the reason is because we don't have any supply; it's all demand. But this provides a section of housing that people can downsize into.
Amy, one more minute.
People can start out.
Thank you.
Can start out in. So obviously the design residential development is beneficial for numerous reasons over the single-family home layout.
If they were rentals, what would they go for?
Probably $2,500 for a 2-bedroom. Again, no supply. That's because we need more supply.
Okay, I think we've gotten good input by the board. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Ken?
Thank you all for
Okay.
allowing us to show.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Amy, both for your
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
You've been developing in the town for the last year.
Who are you? You got it. Our point of order, you got to, the gentleman has to step to the pole.
Step to the podium.
Chris,
step to the podium, please.
Development Corporation, who are you?
Hi, my name's Christopher Salsino. I'm the applicant, and I just want to bring you guys up to date as to we got to this point.
It's your property,
My property.
just by yourself.
No, this is my partner, John.
Okay, so I know there's signs behind my house supposed to.
Point of order, the gentleman needs to speak to the board.
Come on, speak.
So I just
Speak to the board.
We purchased the property approximately a year ago. We came in last year for a rezone. We were denied. We've now gone through the town code. Our engineering firm was the one who found this code. We sat down with the town in an informal meeting, said, we'd like to pursue this code and bring this forward. They said, great, please do it. We knew nothing about them repealing the code. We're finding out this past week. We've been working on a plan for 2 months in conjunction with the town, the council members, the attorney.
Hold on, sir, hold on for a second, hold on.
No.
You got to be more specific, sir, because I have not been part of
We
the
had an
conversation.
informal meeting.
With who?
Jim Moran, Angela Bettina.
Okay.
Town planner.
Okay.
The zoning administrator, in the room next
Okay,
door.
All right, that's not,
There's none of us on this board right now, so.
Informal meeting.
that's not inappropriate. That's the council member that represents the area. Just want to clarify that. Go ahead.
We showed them the code. They said, you have every right to pursue this code. Jim, we asked him for a lot count. What's the lot count before we left the meeting? We then went home and did our homework and devised a plan and applied for the board. That's how board we got to this. We're looking to develop the property. We're not looking to upset anybody. We want to do it with as little impact as possible. We realize you guys don't, growth is a big issue, but how we got here and how this is being repealed, we've worked with the town. We just found out a week ago that they're trying to repeal it.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
And just with all due respect to the landowner, understand that meeting with one council member, that's not inappropriate, but ultimately it comes before the town board to make a collective decision. So at this point, the full town board has to weigh in on if we're going to move forward with the repealing of the statute or if we're going to move forward with a rezone. There's 2 actionable items that the town board collectively has to decide with respect to a project like this. So meeting with one council member is certainly not inappropriate, but it does ultimately have to come back to the full board.
Yeah.
And with all due respect,
Thank you.
we're trying to work with the town
Okay.
to see how we can move forward for a year.
I understand.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Wasn't a third choice?
Come up.
Come on up. Come on up, please.
Wasn't a third choice to just reorganize 2450 by Dutchess County? Didn't they suggest that? Because the councilman didn't say that as part of the opportunity.
I did not hear. I didn't hear the gentleman.
No, he's saying, Bill, that the planning, Dutchess County Planning is saying that rather than to repeal, we should be amending the code with more linkage to the plan and justification.
That's correct. Dutchess County Planning is also saying that 24050 could progress a stated objective of the town's comprehensive plan. Okay, I was here in 2010 when we did the comprehensive plan. We were very specific where we identified multifamily housing within the comprehensive plan. That area was not identified as multifamily housing. So I would rebut that to Dutchess County Planning. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Yes, please.
Hi, excuse me for 1 second.
You can take them down, maybe.
So I don't intend to address this whole personal thing.
Identify yourself.
Chris Morley, 276 Cedar Hill Road. Lived here for, it's going to be 62 years in a couple months, in the same house. I live adjacent to this property. This is a property I've had campsites in, hunted in. I understand it can be developed, and I'm not necessarily fighting that. I want to fight you guys. And I say that because I want the board, our board, to represent the people who live here now, not the people who are coming in here. I'm all for good housing, low housing, better housing. I think that's all wonderful. I don't think Cedar Hill can handle, even if they built houses, which they're entitled to build, I don't think Cedar Hill can handle the sewer and the water. We have not had water on Cedar Hill, and we have some of the lowest wells, or highest wells, if you will. I didn't want to address you guys personally, but your water supply parcel right there, every one of the houses that abut that, our wells are like 120 feet. Every new house is like 650 and hydrofractured. I don't know where you're going to get your water. But anyway, so I really want to talk to you about when this idea came to the planning board last year. The planning board said that they would look at starting a comprehensive investigation into utilities for this particular property. And has that ever happened? I challenge you to get to the planning board and ask if that's happened, because almost nobody on Cedar Hill, Pine Ridge, Rosewood, Dorothy, none of them have sewer except for a few of us between Rosewood and Old Hopewell, and only on the west side, right? So I don't believe that this properties can stay forever green, because I'm sure there's somehow, some way that somebody's going to change that and come before another panel and say, now we want to do this. And what happens if you give them authorization to drill wells and the wells don't bring water, right? This has happened to a neighbor who you gave, not say you, sorry, I apologize for that, who gave them the ability to build on a site that they couldn't get sewage, or they couldn't get the PER test or whatever it was for their sewer, for their septic. So the town paid for one house to come all the way up Teresa Boulevard and tie in on Cedar Hill with a pump just for one house, because they were going to sue this board or sued this board. And I can't imagine what would happen if you grant some operation the ability to put this in and they can't get water. And then if they do get water, it's going to be coming to you guys, and whether they pay for it or not, we on the top of the hill, as we speak, still have nothing. So take care of your residents who live here now. Please, that's my point to you guys. Cedar Hill cannot handle that much traffic. It's a speedway now. That's all I would say. So it's not against this, I really would like you guys to take care of existing residents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I've lived on there 3 months before Chris.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Now we speak about the project.
I've been there for 60 years also.
Sure, you can comment since there were some comments made.
So we want to try to keep the comments to the legislation, if we can.
The legislation or the?
We really want to try to keep them to the legislation.
Speak out the legislation.
I mean, the public hearing is for the legislation.
My name is Stephen Carinci. I live on Cedar Hill Road in the town of Wappinger. I would like you guys to go forward and close that loophole in the law. I think it's best for the people of the town of Wappinger and the current residents. And I don't think you should take into account too much, like this attorney mentioned, the opinion of Dutchess County. Governments that govern closest to the people govern the best. And we really don't know the intentions or the relationships that the people of Dutchess County, Dutchess County board there made in regards to that report. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Sure.
My name is Brian McGrath. I represent a landowner in Wappingers. The question is, if you repeal this law, do you now just go for a conventional subdivision of 60 or single-family houses? Are you going to require it? I mean, so it won't be any more multifamily, obviously. So it'll be a basic subdivision of single-family houses?
Well, yeah.
cluster
I mean,
those?
That's up to the
It's
applicant.
up to the applicant, right? So right now, the applicant has, of course, based on what Mr. Stenger's saying, made an application based on the law that is up for repeal. If that were repealed, then there's the question of, do they still apply, or are they going to have to reapply based on the repealed law? That's
I'm not
the
even
legal
saying
issue.
that. I'm
No,
saying if you
there's-
do repeal,
Right.
and this gentleman, there's no application in on this piece of property, but let's say he goes in, do you go with a conventional, or are you going to be allowed to cluster?
They can seek,
There's other provisions in the code that
That will-
permit average density subdivisions, cluster subdivisions, open space
Right.
But it will
subdivisions.
take away the multifamily end of it.
No,
No.
it's just this one design residential development. So
Right.
there's
Yeah.
other provisions in the code that, permit some flexibility, which are not
correct.
the subject of this repeal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion to close and second, all in favor?
Just on the question, I just want to say that folks that may have comments that you don't have in mind right now, you can feel free to submit further comments to the town clerk's office. They'll be entered into the record, and we will receive your comments in writing.
And we will be posting all the information that you heard tonight.
What's the timeframe, Mr. Good, for the written comment?
With respect to the public hearing this evening, we have,
Yeah, about 3 weeks.
Can we,
Yeah.
Before I publish the minutes for this meeting, which would be January 9th.
rights.
We just pick a date, so.
can we,
Well, go ahead,
I would
Jim.
like to have an attorney-client
Yeah,
session
yeah.
with the board
Okay.
So
to discuss some of the,
Well, I think we first vote on closing.
well, that's part of the question.
Okay, okay.
Right, so let me just say this. So at any time, on any subject, residents can submit comments, with especially this particular discussion this evening. You can always submit comments in writing to the town clerk's office. They will be entered into the record at any time, and they will be delivered to the town board members. With respect to further action on this process, we have to have some legal discussion at some point this evening.
So there's proposal to go into executive session right now for the
Attorney-client
purpose of attorney-client discussions.
I'll second it.
There's motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. So we'll break to get some advice from our counsel.